Welcome to the Ignorance is Strength podcast. I'm your host, Fabian motherfucking Ogata, and I don't know shit, but that's okay. All right, let's get this shit started. Thank you everybody for listening to the Ignorance is Strength podcast. Hope you all enjoyed episode number 21 with Sam Mitchell of autismrocksandrolls.com. Definitely learned a lot from that kid and from his mom about autism. I know a lot of times we have silly, bullshit episodes, but to me that one was really cool. And I hope to see, a lot out of that kid. We're back though today with a familiar voice. She was one of the panelists and one of the more outspoken panelists from episode number 18, the singles panel. Welcome back to the podcast today, Grace Ogata. How are you doing today?
Hey Fabian, how's it going?
Good.
Was I really that outspoken?
At least the volume was up. I can say that part. Right?
Okay, good.
And so I gotta ask, did you enjoy listening back to your first podcast experience?
No. The content was great.
Okay.
But I didn't realize, how much of a valley girl I sounded like.
Uh-huh.
Do you ever get that? Where you listen to yourself and you're like, damn, my voice is weird.
I think when I first started, because I started recording myself early as a kid just to hear what I sounded like. I was a weirdo. I really liked, pro wrestling and stuff like that. And they were really big about doing, promos, so they would talk shit about the other wrestler. And, sometimes I would record myself, let me hear what I sound like. And I would, even, as a 5-year-old, I remember I would be all over the family, home movies and stuff like that, trying to be the star. So when I heard myself back, I'm like, wait a minute, I don't sound like that in my head, But now, now that I'm and then I started doing music when I was a teenager and stuff, and now that I'm doing this shit every week, it's just it sounds like what it sounds like. I don't care.
Well, you're lucky. You have a good voice.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know if your listeners know, but you sing a lot, and you have an amazing voice.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So it's fortunate for you. But for me, I just sound like some girl that grew up in LA.
Well, it's better. I think we were talking about it, though. It's better than sounding like you grew up in Boston, right?
Yeah. Go park the car.
A mouthful of clams and shit. We don't need all that, right? But, other than that, did you I thought it was pretty cool. A lot of people were like, man, it was pretty funny at times, Did any of your friends or family listen to it? That you know?
Yeah, they did.
Uh-huh.
They were like, wow, you actually had some good input, as if, I wouldn't have.
Uh-huh. They were surprised.
Yeah, they were like, wow. And then they were like, why are you still single if you think this way?
I don't know. So then the streak has not ended. You're still living the single life.
Yes. I've been, dating here and there, but nothing, worth mentioning or writing home about.
How does that even work in, a post-COVID life, let me have virtual coffee with you.
People don't give a fuck. People are like, oh yeah, come over to my house, or let's go out for a drink, or let's go to a restaurant, or let's go walking on the beach, stuff like that.
But it's a little more relaxed in San Diego area, right?
Oh, for sure. Well, yeah. So I visited Melrose the other day to go pick up a friend to move down to San Diego, and Melrose was crazy. It was hella packed. All the stores were open. Thank God everybody was wearing masks, but holy crap, people are out in LA. In San Diego, people are actually staying indoors. People are chill out here.
I think you're right though. Nobody gives a shit anymore. I was a couple weeks ago in Big Bear, and I'm like, what the fuck? Nobody has any sort of 6 feet in between them or anything like that. Everything seemed to be open. And it was the most packed I've ever seen it. So it's I think people are kind of rebelling, or I don't know what the hell's going on. But I do think it ties into our topic perfectly, because we got a completely different topic today. We're going to chat a little bit about mental health, right? And so this is something that you definitely have an interest in, right?
Most definitely. I just want to preface by saying that I'm not a doctor. I'm not a counselor. I didn't go to school for this. I just spent like a lot of hours and money in therapy to get to where I am. A lot of hours of researching also to better understand myself and others.
Yeah.
So
I'm not a doctor either. I'm just a little crazy.
We're all crazy, Jay, to the end.
So you definitely, I know you wanted to talk to the listeners and everything about this, kind of, help people become a little bit more like empathetic and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, we're going through a really tough time, and I wanted to share with not just you and your listeners, but basically like everybody about my experiences. I'm going to get a little bit vulnerable in hopes that it will either help or inspire others to be more empathetic. People are going through, tough times where there's lack of human contact or communication. I am definitely worried about my financials. I know I'm not the only person.
Yeah.
Not having a sense of purpose. I'm unemployed, so I can definitely empathize with that. It's hard to get up every day in the morning and, try to be productive. So there's always that, I'm also diabetic. So, I'm scared to death about this whole pandemic thing. And I know I'm not the only one either. There's a lot of people who have autoimmune diseases. And, even if you're healthy, this is really scary. Political tension.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've experienced that on Facebook or social media, but I've even had to delete like a couple of friends or at least mute them. Because it's just getting tense.
Yeah, people are out of control. They're really stupid about it. It's like, dude, it's not like the fucking Super Bowl. You don't have to pick sides so, so religiously. You know what I'm saying? It's not one of those... Politics should never be that. It should never be about like, well, that's my group of people. It's like, well, sometimes they don't represent every single aspect of what you want, Like, I always, consider myself a little bit more conservative on most issues, but I am definitely not, behind Trump in any sense of the word, I'm just, I can't, I can't get behind a lot of that. But at the same time, people feel so strongly both ways, and I'm really surprised that we've gotten to that point where the political tension is so, so huge, so much of an issue every day,
We're so divided right now, and it's almost scary, to be honest with you. People are really intense on both sides. Like, I don't know if you heard about, like, the mayor of Oregon, how he's blaming Trump, and Trump's blaming the mayor of Oregon for being irresponsible because there's been so many riots and people aren't being accounted for when they're, damaging property or hurting people. So it's dividing the country, like everything that's going on, like BLM, the pandemic. And it's really sad to see our country almost kind of like falling apart when we really need to be stronger right now to get through it.
Yeah, I mean, we might be, the declining Rome at this point, right?
Don't say that.
Not to add to any more of the mental anguish going on right now, but I hope not, but we'll see. Time will tell after the election.
Yeah, hopefully. People think that it's a political stunt also. They're like, oh, after November, October, it'll be fine. Pandemic will be gone. I'm like, you really think so, guys? Like, you really think it's a political stunt? But I don't know. Who knows? Right? But on the flip side, have you seen, relationships getting stronger? Like, I've noticed that my friends and I have definitely spent a lot of more time. We're very supportive of each other. So, on the flip side, it's kind of nice to see relationships get stronger also.
Yeah. And I think it's on a case-by-case basis, too, because you start to, once you have to spend so much time with people indoors, too, you start to kind of see, like, who you can really get along with and who you can't get along with, So that's an interesting part of this whole thing. So it's definitely, with all that's going on right now, there's definitely a lot of meat on the bone as far as what we can dive into in regards to mental health. But before we get into all that, as you know, with every episode, I sort of like to frame the picture, let people know who you are. I know we already did a little bit of that in the last episode you were on. We know about the long walks on the beach with your dog, and that, and that short, ugly dudes will get swiped left. But is there anything else that you'd like to share, about yourself?
Yeah, I'm not as superficial as you're picturing me to be, Fabian.
I'm just saying, it was honest. I think you were one of the only ones that said, yeah, the ugly dudes are not getting a shot.
Listen, I'm just an honest person. Yeah, over time, it's just better to be honest with other people and yourself, and that's what I've learned, most importantly in therapy. So I'm 34 now. I grew up in like a middle to high class neighborhood in LA called South Pasadena. For those who aren't familiar with LA, it was kind of rough growing up because I was not middle to high class. My dad worked his ass off for me to go to South Pasadena High School. So socially, it was kind of difficult for me growing up. I'm also full Japanese. So I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood. So that was always, I didn't realize until I got older, but that psychologically did some work for me also. Like, I didn't want to go to Japanese school. I didn't want to speak Japanese. I didn't want to bring like Japanese food to school. And I was picked on, and, just kids are so mean sometimes. And, being like in the educational field.
Were you
so I got the hell out of LA. And I got the hell out of LA because I was in a horrible situation at work. And that's when I actually really started doing therapy. So they offered free therapy sessions, which was nice. But I realized that my issues were deeper than just work. So I started seeing a therapist at like 25-ish, and I haven't stopped seeing a therapist since. Growing up in LA, it's not really a faux pas, I feel like. I don't know about you, Fabian, like where you grew up, but I feel like everybody went to therapy where I grew up.
Here is where you and I will differ. I don't know a single person growing up who went to therapy. Now, I don't know. They may have gone, right? But nobody ever talked about it,
Really?
Right, yeah. And
that's weird. Because, like, in LA, like, everybody's like, oh, I have to go to therapy. Or, like, it's kind of like a spa day almost for people in LA, I feel like. At least, in, like, the Beverly Hills type circle, I guess. So I never thought it was a faux pas until I met my ex, who is from Texas, and he was like, why do you go to therapy? And like made me feel really bad about it. So I continue to go to therapy by myself, even though we needed to go together. But I've had like a lot of issues growing up. My mom was bipolar. She had chronic depression. She was verbally and physically abusive. So I had a lot of issues that I needed to work out, and I still do. So, some people need therapy more than others, and I was definitely somebody who really needed to go to therapy. Do you ever feel that way? Like therapy would help you, Fabian?
It might, and I think, after talking to a lot of people who have gone on a regular basis, it seems like it may, but I think that's one of the cultural things. Even though I grew up in El Monte, which is 10-15 minutes away from LA, from like downtown LA. It's more, I think, of a cultural thing with Hispanic people where we just don't talk about our problems. Kind of just, and especially for male Hispanics, we kind of just bottle that shit up, till it eventually overflows and you take it out on the wrong person.
Yeah, like that whole machismo kind of attitude where I don't need help.
That's exactly what it is, because, I've gone through a lot of shit and I've never really talked about it with anyone, but I do, I don't think I have a big anger problem or anything like that, but, catch me on the wrong day, it's the Incredible Hulk,
Really?
Yeah, and a lot of people are very, surprised to hear that because, I'm pretty mellow most of the time. I think I'm very polite and everything like that, but when it's kind of crazy because sometimes even the littlest things will set me off. Like if I can't find something that I put down 15 minutes ago, as a kid, I would like punch walls and stuff like that. And
what?
Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
You're like a big teddy bear, Fabian.
Well, it takes some work. It takes a lot of work, because I think too because you have more so, your home personality, your school personality, your personality with your friends. When people use the phrase two-faced, I'm like, well, you got to give me a little more credit than that. I got at least 7 faces, you just have to. And I think, like, most of the time, I think, that those little explosions and stuff come out, like, at home. That's when it would come out the most. Because that's where the most repressed shit comes from, Socially, I think I was a little bit able to handle things a little bit better. But, I definitely, to answer your question, therapy would probably do quite a number on a few things that are going on up there in the old noggin. But I've never considered it. I'm actually kind of curious what, I mean, I don't want to say like drove you to it like it's a bad thing, but what drove you to, first wanting to explore that realm of therapy? Because we had a guest on episode 15 who just went through so much, abuse and finally decided like, hey, it's time to, find a solution, start, healing and stuff like that. So what do you think? Mm-hmm. What do you think? I know you mentioned a lot about your background and everything, but is there anything you can pinpoint to kind of target and be like, this is what, made me give this a shot once and for all?
Yeah, most definitely. What's wild is despite like the physical and verbal abuse growing up, despite, having trauma as a child growing up in that type of environment where I didn't fit in, it wasn't until I had my first sales job that I was like, oh shit, I need therapy. So sales jobs are, not for everybody, obviously. There's a huge amount of pressure every month, every week, every day. And I was kind of at that point where I was burnout. I was, definitely partying because, I was still in my 20s. But at work, I was so miserable to the point where it was physically taking control over me. So I was stressed out to the point where I was having stomach issues. I was getting headaches. I was tired all the time. Sorry, my dog's like crying. I wasn't sleeping well, and when I did sleep, I didn't want to get out of bed. Like, I just knew it was too familiar because I was like, oh shit, I think I'm turning into my mother. Okay. And, I saw everybody else in the office, and they had seemed to, take the pressure just fine. I mean, they were stressed out, but they weren't, getting physically ill. So I finally spoke with a counselor, and I thought it would take like a couple sessions, but he's like, no, this is deeply rooted, Grace. Like, this isn't something that you can fix overnight. It's not something that you can fix by getting a new job. Yeah, it'll help, but like, this is deeper than that. So, that's when I realized, my upbringing had a lot to do with it. I'm Japanese, and it's kind of like the Mexican culture where you don't really show your emotions. They are historically very suppressed people, where you hide your feelings under the rug. They have a high suicide rate because, therapy is a faux pas, again, in Japan. And, you don't talk about your feelings. You don't talk about your problems. You kind of just hide it. So you suck it up. And that's kind of how I was brought up. I remember growing up, like, my parents being like, well, suck it up. Like, you got to do what you got to do. You're a kid. You don't have any choice. So I think that followed with me into adulthood, and it may have produced my OCD. I have been diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, and that definitely triggers my anxiety and depression on a day-to-day basis even. So that's kind of where I started discovering about all my issues.
Now, with OCD, though, that's, like, actually, like, a medical condition, right? Because a lot of people, I think they use that phrase, but they use it for, like, I don't know, I like all things one color. Oh, I'm OCD, but...
Yeah, or I'm a germaphobe. I have OCD. It's like...
So what's...
No, it's not like that.
How would you describe the actual condition, then?
So it's in the name. I'm sure most people don't even know what it stands for, but it's obsessive compulsive disorder, where you're obsessing over something subconsciously, and you can't let go of it. So it manifests, and it kind of takes over your behaviors, your thinking, and even your consciousness. It's kind of hard to explain. I have a hard time sleeping at night because I obsess over something that happened in the day or something that will happen in the future. And I just can't control it. Like, one time my boyfriend was like, well, just stop thinking about it. Like, think about something else. And it's like, no, I can't control it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And that's what OCD is something that you can't control, basically, that you obsess over. So, germaphobes, yes, they may may have OCD because, they're obsessed with, getting the germs off of your hands, and it's, it makes you feel better if the germs are off of your hands and you wash your hands 10 times a day. So that is, a form of OCD. Organization is definitely a form of OCD, but it's way more than that. It's, like, deeply rooted than that.
So it's not just like, oh, well, I need to make sure that all my money is arranged by $1 bills facing this way, $5 bills facing this way. It's more so like, okay, I experienced something earlier, and that shit's still on my mind. I don't know why it's still on my mind. Get the fuck out of my mind.
Yeah, I mean, like, that example is, like, perfect, though, because I do that all the time.
Okay.
I like my bills facing, like, the right way, right side up, and then, like, the right base. But it's just something that you subconsciously do, so it won't bug me later, because of the fact that it's, out of order, or it's upside down, or whatever. It's such a weird thing to explain.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, I mean, to me it does, because I think I might have a little touch of that as well, but, it's like things like, if the fucking door is open, like, half an inch, you gotta, you can't sleep, comfortably because that damn thing's open, you have to get up and close it, something like that.
Yeah, so it's definitely that. That's more of like you probably don't have OCD, but the biggest difference is that, that would cause me anxiety if I wasn't able to fix it. So there's definitely a clear line between, like, pet peeves and OCD.
Okay.
Yeah. But I don't know, it's also upbringing too. Like, my parents, have OCD also. I think most Japanese people do. They're, like, purists about everything. They're perfectionists. So, again, I was raised and groomed to have this type of behavior, and then it kind of manifested into OCD, unfortunately. So it's definitely cultural upbringing too.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, you mentioned, being Japanese and having that mindset of work. I remember there was this phrase, I just had to look it up right now. I think it's karoshi. where it's like you're worked to death kind of thing. It's like, it's almost like suicide by work, right? There's a fucking phrase for it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's become part of the vernacular there. I'm like, the hell? Like, that's nuts.
It's a real thing. My dad is going through the same thing. Yeah, my dad's always like, I'm just going to keep working until I die. I'm like, what is the reasoning behind this? And he's like, I feel like I'm just going to die if I stop working, which is, it may be true, but I'm like, damn, Dad, like, take a vacation, retire, like, relax for a little bit. But yeah, I think like he was brought up that way too, to work really hard until your last breath.
I can relate to that. I think you and I were talking offline, and I told you I've never taken a sick day. I've never taken a day off of work unless I work at a school, so if it's like winter break or whatever and there's no work, I just won't work, because they're not requiring it. But I have never taken a sick day from work. I've worked nonstop, even. Back when I was doing, kind of like freelance security work, I literally worked 500 something days in a row with not a single day off, not Christmas, not Easter, none of that stuff. Probably worked longer hours on those days. So when it comes to my mental health, I think, a little bit screwed up right there. I think my priorities are a little out of whack. Yeah.
To the listeners, I was shaking my head the whole entire time you were talking. You need those days off. I hate to say it, and it sounds terrible, but I'm glad that the pandemic happened for the sole purpose of people taking a break from work, spending more time with their children, their families. We needed this because, culturally, we're not as intense as, say, for instance, Japan or other Asian countries like China, where, you basically work to death.
Right.
But I still feel like you still need that mental break every once in a while. Like when I was working for that job, when I first started going to therapy, I was taking like vacations every month because I needed it. Like 3-day vacations or, the week. I didn't care if I had PTO or not. I was just like, I need this for myself. And at that point, I was like, okay, like, I know myself a little better now. I'm probably not going to do sales anymore. And that didn't happen because the money is good. So I continued to do sales, but I knew how to handle it a lot better in the future jobs to come. But yeah, like at that time, I was sick. I was so sick. I had gained weight too. It was bad. It was a really bad time for me. And it sucks because, it had to get to that point where, I would start therapy when I really should have started when I was younger.
I think you were mentioning how you're kind of glad the whole quarantine thing happened and that people needed to press pause for a bit. I would jump on board with that line of thinking. Of course, I'm not glad that people were getting sick. I myself am a two-time COVID survivor. I think I got.
Are you serious?
I got it twice. Yeah.
What are you doing, Fabian? Are you going out making out with like every chick that you meet on the street? How did you catch that?
No, actually, I actually didn't really go out much at all. The first time around, I believe, was right at the beginning of all the craziness. I got it at work. I'm sure of it at that point because I had a staff member who was really sick, and it wasn't like regular sick. She was out literally a whole week, but came back and was still kind of showing the symptoms that now you can say like, okay, that was probably COVID, right? So I picked up on that, within a couple days. And then we went on the mandatory, it's going to be 2 weeks off. We'll be back at school in 2 weeks. 2 weeks turned into we're still off. But the second, I got over that, and probably that took like a month. It was really bad the first time. It's horrible, the worst sickness I ever had. And then, the time after that was because my cousin came and did the podcast with me, and he hadn't been, social distancing or doing any of that, face coverings or anything like that. He was just kind of out and about. He's just doing his own thing. And he actually got everybody sick, and Yeah, I'm talking about a whole family. So I got it twice. But other than that, I've been at home. I haven't been doing anything outdoors. I've been ordering all my groceries and stuff like that through Instacart. Because like when I went to Walmart and Sam's Club and stuff like that, that shit was packed. There's no point in even in trying to enforce any rules when nobody's following them. So
yeah,
I've been at home for most of the time, just trying to do my part. And I definitely don't want to get sick again because it's really bad. You can't. I remember I couldn't even breathe, like getting in and out of the shower. It was so bad.
Oh my God, Fabian.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. But like you mentioned though, I'm glad we took that pause because even when I did get laid off during this whole quarantine, but even before that, for a couple months, I only had like maybe 20 minutes to 2 hours worth of work every day anyway, so it gave me an opportunity to really start kind of like delving into some interests. This quarantine, gave birth to the podcast. It led me to kind of experiment a little more with smoking barbecue, and I literally smoked meats every day for like 3 months to learn how to perfect that shit. Because if I was going to sell it to people, I don't want to sell rinky-dink shit. I want to sell top-of-the-line good stuff. So that, like...
You're not Japanese, Fabian.
I might be. I'm like, I got to take one of those DNA tests or something because I always kind of speculate. I'm like, I got to be some sort of Pacific, Islander or Japanese or something. I'm like, I kind of see it a little bit in the eyes and, the nose or whatever, but I don't know. I'm probably a mix of all kinds of crap, but it would make sense if I was. I should have probably been a sumo wrestler. I love wrestling, I probably could have been a sumo wrestler. But yeah, hitting pause or whatever, it, kind of give me an opportunity to start kind of doing more passion projects, I think the only thing left to do that I didn't really jump on as much, but I did, dabble in a little was like, play some music and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So while yes, it kind of, drove me to kind of being like, oh, I'm so bored, like everything, bitching and complaining like everybody else, like, oh, the gyms are closed, I can't get a decent haircut. If you look at me now, I cut my own damn hair, those little things, I mean, didn't affect me as much. I kind of looked at it from a positive point of view as well, as much as I could,
Good.
But I mean, like you said, every now and then for your mental health, you gotta press pause, right?
Yeah, you have to like listen to your body too. Like before I saw a psychologist, not my therapist, I was getting like all sorts of issues, right? And I talked to my doctor about it, and she's like, oh, we'll do a whole bunch of tests. We'll figure out what's wrong. And I'm like, no, I think it's my work. Like, can you put me on medical leave? She's like, well, I don't think it's your work. I think, you have other issues too. Just to be safe, let's, do some tests and stuff. And you really need to listen to your body. Like, just because somebody has a PhD doesn't mean that, they know what's best for you at the end of the day. So I'm glad I didn't listen to her and went to a different doctor.
Yeah.
And was referred out to a psychologist to, get more medical help because, the difference between a therapist and a psychologist is that, they could prescribe medication and stuff like that. So, it's so important to listen to your body. And when your body says stop, you got to listen to it and take a pause and take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm. For sure. All right. I wanted to jump into a little bit more of your story, but before we do that, I mean, I think I want to jump into some social media says, numbers and comments real quick. But before I jump into that, how are you actually doing right now? Like, how do you feel with all this quarantine stuff going on?
Oh, man. It's been rough. It's been really rough. So I got laid off right before quarantine, which I was totally cool with because I was going to school at the time. And once I graduated school, it was March, I think. So right after quarantine had started. Mm-hmm. And I was like, fuck, how am I supposed to find jobs now? Yep. So it's been super stressful, but I've been trying to keep myself busy. Because I don't have a job, I signed up for Medi-Cal, and I want to talk about this a little bit. So this is how much our medical system believes that mental health is important to you. So I have mental health coverage. It covers one therapy session every month, and it's one 30-minute session. Mm-hmm. And I don't, obviously, you haven't been to therapy, so you don't know what the regular schedule is like. But, most of the time it's like 45 minutes to an hour. 30 minutes in, you're barely scratching the surface. Mm-hmm. And, I used to go twice a week. Mm-hmm. Once a week at the very least. So, all these people who are out of work that lost their insurance, that are now on, Medi-Cal, if they were going to therapy, they went from like once a week to like once a month for 30 minutes. Wow. So, it's been tough, but I've been really lucky to have friends that work as kind of like therapists. They're not there to like, guide me or tell me what to do, but they're at least listening to me. Yeah. So I've been really fortunate, because I do have great friends, but it's been really rough. I've been trying to share that with everybody so that, people don't feel alone. Mm-hmm. And essentially that's what the purpose is on this podcast today.
Yeah. I mean, when you bring up therapy, and for me, it kind of makes me think about like on TV shows and stuff like that in movies, how it's always like the rich person that has like the therapist, It's never like the poor working class person that's there like, I got to go see my therapist two times a week, And I think that's part of the problem is that there's such a stigma behind it where it's like, no, that's not our thing, that's their thing, And maybe that has to do too with, that whole limitation with Medicare, right? It's like they don't see it as important.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's just one of those things that, us poor folk, we don't do, And that's definitely got to change, because we're all wired, differently. But I think, it doesn't matter what social class, what social setting you're in. Sometimes you just need to talk to people.
Yeah. Fabian, I think you're right. Like, therapy is a luxury, because most of the time it's incredibly expensive if you don't have insurance. So you need insurance to be able to afford it, unless you're, beaucoup rich. And you need to take time, if you have a 9-to-5 job, you have to take time away from work to go to therapy also, which is a luxury also. I think most people can't afford to take time off of work. I don't know a lot of therapists that work on Saturdays or even past 5, so it's incredibly difficult to access for most people. But luckily there's some platforms that we'll talk about later that do offer, odd hour therapy sessions. But again, it's definitely a luxury. And I think most people, they're trained to think that they don't need it. So, the brain is so amazing. Like, our bodies are so amazing. So I'm going to get a little scientific here. So the brain is, like any other organ, it's, there to function, to do one thing. And the brain, when it experiences trauma, it tries to fix itself right away, like any other muscle in your body and stuff like that. So when there's a traumatic event, your brain does everything it can to kind of basically slap a Band-Aid on it and get through the day. So you're not really facing or confronting these issues. And then it kind of subconsciously manifests, and it may pop up later down the line, but this is how our body works. So most people think, I'm okay today. Like, I think I'll get by today. And so our brain tricks us to think that we're okay. And essentially, we end up thinking that we don't need therapy.
Yeah. All right. So as far as social media goes, I asked a simple question, right? I asked, has the pandemic/quarantine affected your mental health at all? What do you think the percent was?
75%?
That said, it has affected them?
Yeah.
It was actually a little lower. I was surprised. It was 60-40. So 60% said yes, it has. 40% said no, it hasn't. And I wonder what their, what each person's situation is. Because I wonder if, like, some of them just kept working like normal, or, because there's people who haven't stopped working, the essential workers and whatnot. But I don't know. I think it should be closer to 100, even if it's like negatively or positively, right? In some way, shape, or form, this has had to have affected your drive to work, in a good way, maybe. Maybe there's less traffic. The way you have to perform your duties at work, some people can't work with the damn mask on or anything like that, So I don't know about that. I mean, I think some people maybe when I say affected, maybe they think negatively, but
maybe, yeah.
And then some.
I was watching Sports Center a couple nights ago, and I forgot who they were interviewing, but they were interviewing an NBA player, and he said, I didn't realize how my mental health would affect so much in the game because of everything that's going on right now. And I think he was referring to the pandemic and BLM. And it was kind of nice to hear that. And, also surprising that, even athletes don't even consider, like, your mental health to be incredibly important to play in a playoff game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's kind of... You would think that your mental health would have to be, like, top-notch at that point.
You would think. Yeah. You'd think all of those rich guys would be in therapy.
Yeah. So, like, some of the comments that I got from social media says... I'm not going to name them, but, some people said stuff like, I'm depressed all over again. Another person said, my anxiety was crazy. I had no escape. I usually prefer to be out and about, so I had to find different ways to socialize. And one comment was actually on the opposite side. She said, it's been great for my mental health because it forced me to slow down, which we kind of already talked about a little bit. Right? So definitely a lot of different reactions to, to what's going on. And I don't know how anybody could say that it hasn't affected them, It's like we've never been in our history, in our living history, right? We've never been at this point where everything has changed, and everything has changed. Let's not kid ourselves, right? I mean, we've never been at this point. I mean, maybe, a few hundred years ago with the bubonic plague, they had this going on, but we weren't alive for that, But everything you brought up at the beginning of this episode where, we have this crazy pandemic going on. We have all this political bullshit going on. The fight between, just regular people and the cops and everything, kids not being able to go to a regular school, right? Trying to find out how am I going to, work, parents trying to find out how am I going to work and get my kid educated. It has to have affected everybody, but I guess, everybody feels it differently.
Yeah. And you know what, Fabian, I'm glad you brought up kids because I think oftentimes kids are kind of written off in these types of situations. Like, they're going through the pandemic too. Like, I'm sure they're not happy. They may be happy that they're not stuck in school, but they're cooped up in the house. They're cooped up with cranky parents who are still working from home. It's a really difficult time for kids too. So I'm glad you highlighted that. And also, the elderly, they're alone. Like I'm sure most elderly retired people didn't leave their houses, but it's still a shift in their environment also. They're still going through the pandemic just like we are also. So,
yeah. Okay,
it's for everybody.
I mean, for the elderly specifically, can you imagine living in a, retirement home and then people are dying left and right, and you can't even have your family come visit because, they're not allowed to,
It's so sad. It's so freaking sad.
Mm-hmm. And with the kids, I felt so bad for the class of 2020. They didn't have like a prom or regular graduation or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So they missed out on a few things that everybody was able to have for their senior year. But what are some things maybe that you do to kind of alleviate some of the stresses, right? What do you do to kind of like relax, chill out?
I've been cooking a lot.
Yeah.
I started doing stand-up paddleboarding, which is fun. Anything to do with physical activity, I feel like is really important. Just hanging out with my dog more, going to the beach, going on just endless drives even, just to get like a different scenery, because being cooped up at home is not very healthy either, I feel like.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Have you gone anywhere? Have you just done those things?
The only thing that I went to Big Bear with some family. I didn't enjoy it that much, to be honest with you, because I still try to just like be like, okay, I'm gonna stay inside most of the time, So it's like it's like, okay, I changed my scenery, but I'm just really just hanging out in somebody else's house, I don't know if it's like I said, me just trying to do my part. But like you said, some of the activities that I've done, I love to cook, so if I can do that, and it'll kind of make me mellow out a little bit. Cool, I'm good with that. But like even little things for the podcast, I love doing the little graphic arts and shit like that, making little, stupid videos or whatever, so things that just kind of kill time. They're building a skill, I guess, but
most definitely, yeah.
But definitely like to keep my brain active and whatnot. I think. You mentioned you've got a special little dog there, right?
Yeah. She is considered my emotional support animal.
Now, real quick, I don't know. You said that's legit, right?
Yeah. No, that's real legit. Like, I have really bad anxiety. I get anxiety attacks. And for sure, I'm like depressed right now, going through this pandemic and everything. And sometimes you just want like physical touch, just something to hold. And like my dog is perfect for that. She's like my little best friend. And I think I wouldn't have gotten through all this meaning like the past decade if I didn't have her. Like she is definitely my emotional support animal. And I'm a huge advocate for emotional support animals, like, especially for PTSD and stuff like that. I don't know, Fabian, do you ever feel like holding something or like someone because you're kind of in like a funk?
I'm wired a little differently. I actually don't like, the whole as much. I like my space, but I don't think so. Not for me as much. No.
Really?
Yeah, I'm a little weird like that.
Yeah, you're machismo.
Yeah. and that, yeah, exactly. And I'm like, that's the. But the thing is that at least acknowledge it, and I'm like trying not to be that in every aspect of my life. But once you grew up that way, it's kind of tough to like fight against it.
Yeah, and that's why therapy really helps. Is I don't know if you know, like, the whole way of how therapy works, but the therapist doesn't tell you what to do. Like, they don't flat out say, Grace, this is wrong, do this instead. It's supposed to be more like they're supposed to guide you to what's good for you or what you may think is good for you. and then have like that epiphany yourself. Because if you have somebody, like a medical professional telling you what to do, you may or may not, take it seriously. You might take it with a grain of salt. But if you have like this self-realization yourself, then, you're more likely to believe it and actually do the things that are right for you. So therapy is great in that sense. Not telling you that you need therapy though, baby.
Hey, I don't care. I like being judged. It's all right.
But yeah, like you're not supposed to feel like you're being judged either by your therapist. It's kind of like in the movies or like on TV shows where like you're sitting or lying down and you're just like spilling your guts, and then they may ask you certain questions to guide you in the right conversation or right mindset or thoughts to have your epiphanies or whatever you want to call them. But most of the time they're just listening to you. So if you can't afford to, see a therapist, or if you don't have time or whatever, it's really nice to know somebody who would just sit there and not judge you and, just listen.
Right. No, for sure. I know you'd pointed out that one of the worst things you can say to people who are kind of, in the whole, like, how do I put it? Like, feeling how they're being affected by their mental health is to just stop stressing out, right?
Yeah. I'm laughing because that was the catalyst to me and my ex breaking up. I was having an anxiety attack, and he's like, "Why are you having an anxiety attack?" I'm like, "It's not something I can control. It just, manifests and it pops out of nowhere. And, it's called an attack because you can't control it. You can't stop." And he's like, "Well, just stop stressing out. Stop, thinking about things." And like, that's like the worst thing you can say to somebody, especially because you can't control what they're going through. It's not that easy, I feel like the majority of people would probably say that, just stop stressing out. But the fact of the matter is that, stress is, something that happens when something else happens. It's an effect. So, if something already happened to give you this effect, you can't really control it. It's kind of out of your hands. It's an effect that happens to you. So, there are things that could help you while you're stressed out, while you're going through stress, but it's so much easier said than done. It's so difficult to get out of that funk.
Yeah. And then another point I wanted to touch on, from when we were kind of preparing for this is, are we in the U.S. kind of like behind as far as like, mental health goes? I mean, Are we just, we don't take it seriously enough, or what do you think?
Yes and no. So I like the fact that the U.S., especially where, like in LA, where, therapy is normalized, but I feel like outside of LA, it's not very highlighted upon. Again, it's seen more as a faux pas. I'm not for, socialism and stuff like that, but I will have to say that these socialist countries, like in Finland, for example, where my best friend lives, he was telling me how, healthcare is free. It's a socialist country. But they also provide therapy sessions, mental health coverage as well. But only if it's mandatory, if like you're having anxiety attacks or you're feeling depressed. But they at least cover as much sessions as need be in order for you to start feeling, I guess, okay. So it's beautiful that they offer that there, and they recognize it, and they support mental health help. But I feel like here, like I mentioned, that 30-minute session a month, I mean, it's almost offensive.
Yeah.
Compared to Finland.
I mean, I know we're mostly, in the U.S., we're mostly like anti, socialist programs and stuff like that. But do you ever see that happening here where we kind of pick up the bill for mental health related things like therapy? Or do you think people will be more closed to it here? Because the reason I ask is because every single time, you see some fucking, some white kid shoot up a school or something like that, we automatically, instead of, saying anything about, the Second Amendment and guns and stuff like that, we'll jump straight to like, oh, well, he just needed, mental health services. Like, do you think we'll ever get behind that fully as a country?
I hope we do. I've seen some commercials. I think they stopped playing them though, but I know a while back they had like one of the Jonas Brothers and Queen Latifah do like a campaign for Cigna where, hey, remember you're covered for mental health coverage. Make sure to use it. Yeah. Not in those words, but like in a roundabout way, they were pretty much saying that. So that was good, but I don't see other insurance companies doing that. Unfortunately, we are so far off from being anywhere close to countries like Finland. I hope we progress and we shine some more light on it and, change the coverage, not just for Medi-Cal, but for all insurance companies. But I don't know. I don't think it'll really happen until, unfortunately something super traumatic happens. Or, we start talking about it a lot more. Mm-hmm. It's funny because we do talk about mental health when something like a shooting happens. Yeah. Like, oh, he was a troubled kid, like he was bipolar, or, he had schizophrenia or some shit like that, or he was taking like pills, or he was addicted to drugs, all of that factors into your mental health. And it's like, okay, so we know what the cause was. Why didn't we do anything to help it? Yeah,
you can't have it both ways where it's like, oh, well, we need more mental health, resources. Okay, let's pay for them. No. It's like, you can't have it both ways. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
And at the same time, you can't just keep pumping people full of pills,
Exactly. Yeah. I remember being on Prozac. One of my doctors prescribed Prozac, and I was really against it. I was like, no, I don't think I really want to be on Prozac. Like, I've heard a lot of stuff about it. I don't know if I feel comfortable. And he's like, okay, well, try it for a couple of months because it doesn't really kick in until, it's in your system for a couple of months, and then see how you feel. And then we'll slowly get you off of it because you never want to cut yourself off of those types of medications like immediately. So a couple months in, I was like, I don't feel comfortable being on this. I was numb. I wasn't depressed. I wasn't getting my anxiety attacks, but I also didn't feel other feelings too. And I just wasn't enjoying life, basically, on it. I had to wean myself off of it. And, you're absolutely correct. Like, most doctors will, again, slap a Band-Aid on it and kind of brush it under the rug and say, like, here's some drugs, when you really need to get to the root of the problem to realize what your issues are and then work on them.
No magic pills for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So, anything else you wanted to throw out there about mental health before? I know you wanted to throw some resources out, but anything else you wanted to throw in there before we get to your resources?
I just want to say that, like, I know, again, I keep saying this word. I hate saying this word, but, it's a faux pas to, seek help. But when your body is telling you that you need help, when your mind is telling you that you need help, you need to listen to it and seek that help. And there's so many resources now. There could be more, but there are some resources out there. And just, if all else fails, talk to your friends. right now is the time where people aren't really judging you for that stuff. Everybody's going through shit. You know, it's such a scary time that we live in. Not to like, you know, get all morbid about this pandemic, but it really is scary. And, you know, you can only try to be positive so much. You know, it's good to stay positive, but at a certain point, you know, it's okay to feel like, you know, I give up, or, you know, I'm tired of, you know, putting forth effort. Like, you just listen to your body, talk to people, and I promise you people will be empathetic and be supportive.
One thing I gave up on was getting buff, getting back into shape. I was like, check it out. Like, when we went on, you know, quarantine around mid-March, I was like, oh, cool. I live right next door to a gym, literally 5-10 feet away. I walk out the front door, I'm at the gym, right? And I'm like, cool, I'm going to be able to work out every day, because they're only going to give us, like, you know, 2 hours of work, you know, from you know, having to work from home and whatnot. And then all the fucking gyms close. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, and then it's like, okay, cool, the gyms are open again, but you have to wear a mask and you have to wear gloves. It's like, God damn it. And then they closed them again. So it's like they're dangling the carrot in front of you, right? And like, for me, it was like, oh, I'm going to use this opportunity, right? But now I'm just like, fuck it, I'm just going to eat delicious barbecue and shit, you know? I'm like, I gave up on that. Hopefully when the gym's open again, I'll put some more effort into it. But for now, I'm probably about 60% barbecue.
Aren't they open now? Did they open yesterday?
So in LA County, no.
Oh.
No, I mean, maybe some are kind of like outlaw gyms, but I know, like, there's a few gyms that started putting equipment outside and stuff like that, but I don't know, like, for most of them, they're not open, and I wanted to go back to normal, you know, like how it was before.
Yeah.
You know, so there's always something uncomfortable about, you know, having to settle, you know, but hey, that's just me, you know.
That's okay. My friends and I were joking about the quarantine 15.
Oh.
Where we've all gained like 15 pounds from quarantine.
Yeah, well, if it's in Spanish, you should say like the quarantine 40, which is like more like 40 pounds. But, yeah, the quarantine 15, we'll stick with that. It sounds nicer. Anyway, you got some resources for us, right?
Yeah. As always, you know, the suicide prevention hotline is always a good resource if you're feeling, you know, like you don't want to live life anymore. Even if you know you want to hurt yourself, 1-800-273-8255. Suicidepreventionlifeline.org is a website. There's a great website if, you know, you yourself aren't going through any mental health issues, but you just want to be an advocate, or you want to support, or you just want to, you know, educate yourself, to be there for loved ones. There's a place called National Alliance of Mental Illness, NAMI, that's NAMI.org. Great resource for, you know, people who want to educate themselves. A lot of literature and a lot of advice for people who are going through it and who aren't going through it. There's this website called BetterHelp.com. It's online therapy, and I actually heard it through another podcast. Apparently they have different categories depending on what type of issues you're going through, whether, you know, you have addiction issues, weight issues, eating disorder issues, or just, you know, you just want mental health help. They have great categories, specialists for you there. It's all online. You can do it from your phone. And so, you know, for those who can't take time off of work to seek therapy, this is a great choice for you. And And if you don't have any insurance coverage at the moment, which a lot of my friends don't right now, whether, you got laid off or you don't qualify for Medi-Cal, at least there's CIMHS. That's CIMHS.com. They provide 8 free online therapy sessions, which is amazing. Depending on what your issues are, 8 therapy sessions may not be a lot, but at least it'll get you started in the right direction, which I think is amazing.
And it's more than one a month, right?
Yeah, more than one 30-minute session a month. And then there's another great source for therapy and free counseling. It's called goodtherapy.org. They're a nonprofit, and they actually have advisors there to help you seek free resources if you're going through issues right now. So those are the resources. I personally have not used the free online therapy sessions, but they have great reviews. So I went on their website and looks very legit. So I hope that helps for some people.
I mean, every little thing helps, I think. And as many resources as you can throw out there, I think one person looks at it, that's a success,
Yeah, sure. If we can just help one person, feel like they're being supported, I feel like we've done a good deed, Fabian.
I think so. And I don't know how you're feeling mentally after this episode, but wasn't too heavy, wasn't too bad. I think feeling pretty good.
Yeah. Well, you gotta stay positive. So, yeah. I'm glad that it wasn't like a deep, dark podcast.
if I would have opened up like I would with a therapist or something, it probably would have been. We didn't need to hear all that. We'll save that for another day. Right? I'll just go on about my barbecue and whatnot. What I do want to do is, like on every episode, I like to talk about the next episode. And on the next episode, I have an international guest. He's originally from the UK, but he's traveled all around the world teaching. And so, we're going to talk a little bit about what it's like to pick up and, go somewhere else, go to another country and have to adapt to them. He now resides in Brazil, where he's married with a kid. And my question to you is, do you think you could ever just pick up and leave like that and start life anew somewhere else and, become what they call an expat?
Totally.
I knew you would say that. I had a feeling.
I feel like I'm well-traveled enough to feel comfortable in other countries and to, pick up and leave and decide to live there. If it's a country that I absolutely enjoy, then hell yeah.
What would be your number one destination?
Oh, that's hard. That's really hard. I don't know. Somewhere in Europe, probably. Maybe Portugal.
See,
maybe.
I don't think I've gotten out there enough to kind of comment on this, but I'm really curious to hear from this guy. And the podcast is kind of international already. I've got plays in every single continent except Australia and Antarctica. I want those two, damn it. I'm like, I know Australia is coming. I feel it. But Antarctica, that one will be difficult.
Antarctica's kind of tough, dude.
That's my goal. If I can get this podcast listened to in Antarctica, then I have succeeded. So, any fucking Eskimos out there with Wi-Fi, good Wi-Fi.
Whoa. You just said the E word, Fabian.
Huh?
That's a cultural faux pas. And here I am saying faux pas again. Your listeners are gonna fucking hate that word after this.
Why don't you explain what it means for the dummies that don't understand?
Yeah, Eskimo is kind of like saying Redskins. Yeah. It's not like a good word. You call them Inuits, or they are considered what's the other name for them? But they're like natives. You don't call them Eskimos anymore, Fabian.
I had no idea.
Are you serious?
No idea. I've never heard that before. I haven't. I thought that was that was okay.
No, it's called Inuit. They're part of the Inuits.
Okay, if there are any Inuits out there listening in Antarctica, I apologize for insulting you earlier, but listen to my fucking podcast, goddammit.
Now they're really not going to listen to your podcast.
Well, then fuck your igloo.
Oh, man.
I just ruined my chances of going truly international and worldwide there. But
yeah, you did.
I apologize for Antarctica people. It's easier. Penguins, whoever lives out there. But anything else you want to throw out there, Grace? Any shout-outs? Any hellos? Any fuck yous?
No fuck yous. Yeah, just want to say hi to my best friend who lives in Finland. I'll make him listen to this. Yeah, like, you know, as I mentioned, it's so important to have, like, a good support system around you right now during these times. And if you don't have time to see a therapist, you know, it's always good to have a really good friend that's rational, that'll listen to you. So I really appreciate him. So he's been getting me through this tough time. So I want to say hi to him.
Cool. All right. So I really appreciate having you on this show for a second time. So if there's ever a third time you want to bring up another topic, you're definitely welcome. You know,
I promise to be a happier topic, I swear.
Maybe we'll look up the Inuits. So we'll have a whole podcast about that, right? Or teaching me not to be, damn, I can't believe that. So it was almost like me being like, I'm talking about engines today. God, was that on that level?
I mean, yeah.
Oh, man.
I feel like most people don't know about, like, the whole, like, Eskimo term being, like, not culturally appropriate. So.
Well, then, I appreciate you.
The more you know.
Appreciate you for correcting me. I'm never one to be offended at being corrected, so there we go. But again, thank you for being on. Anytime you want to be back on, welcome you. Everybody listening at home, appreciate it. Thank you. Fuck you and good night. Subscribe to the Ignorance is Strength podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Like, follow, and share on Facebook and Instagram at Ignorance is Strength Podcast and on Twitter at The Ignorance Pod.